Hello, everyone. Welcome to Remaking the Table. This is a new capacity building webinar series produced by SFU's Community Engaged Research Initiative, also known as CERi. Today, we're exploring trauma-informed approaches to community engaged research. My name is Jackie Wong. I work with CERi, and I'm honored to moderate this discussion with three truly brilliant humans who I'm so glad to be here and sharing with us today. I noticed that there are about 140 people in the room right now, and I'm really curious about where people are calling in from. Just a quick poll to get us started. Curious about where you are situated today. And as we see these results coming in, we are noticing quite an interesting arrangement of people coming from across Canada, elsewhere in BC, and a few international folks as well. And of course, lots of representation from here in Vancouver. I'm also speaking with you from what is known as the foot of Main Street in Vancouver, pretty close to CERi's headquarters at Main and Hastings in the downtown east side. And I recognize this as Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh territory. I'm committed to seeing this territory, including lands and waters, returned or compensated for, and I thank Squamish leader Kel Salem for his public guidance in shaping how to acknowledge this land in a way that resonates with those from whom it's been stolen. I'd now like to invite one of our panelists, Elder William Thomas, to lead us in an opening prayer. Welcome, William.
Right, thank you. Siaya, Creator, grandmothers, grandfathers, all those that work for Creator, we ask that you come join us today, weave of that spiritual web through each of our spirits, so that we may become one mind, one spirit, to be able to do the work we're going to be doing, not only on this webinar, but throughout the rest of the time, that it goes in a way that really helps our people to access medical care and any other care that they're needing in a good, kind, soft, gentle way, so that our people can begin to hold their heads up high and be proud of who they are and have goodness coming from them and into them from all of us, so that they can do that in a way that is special.
Thank you, William. To ground us a little further in this work and to situate this in context of how we're gathering today, I want to tell you a little bit more about CERi. We're a relatively new unit here at SFU, and we exist in part to play a small role in what is absolutely the forever work of shifting power. So we're excited to do this work while also acknowledging the magnitude of it, especially considering ongoing local, international events that illuminate the inequities in our society, and that which many of you are tuned into and attuned to right now. CERi's publishing a soon-to-be-released handbook for community-engaged research that we're really excited to share with all of you as soon as we can, hopefully by the end of this week, and we'll email that to you after this event later on. The handbook is designed to help community organizations gain a practical understanding of community-engaged research, and it also provides a guiding framework for developing a community-engaged research project. So we created the handbook for community organizations, but it can also be useful for students, early career researchers, anyone curious about using research to advance community interests. So the handbook will be on our website soon. It's part of ongoing learning that we're all committed to, and also very much the spirit through which we're convening events like this. So a few things about today. On the next slide, we'll detail how our session will proceed. So in addition to this space in Zoom, we've created a secondary interactive online space that I'm just posting here in the chat. It's a Google Jamboard, and it's an optional space for you to use if you wish, as you wish, for people to connect informally, to share thoughts and ideas, and also share some of your perspectives on trauma-informed practice, which I know, it spreads across a wide range of disciplines and is informed by a number of perspectives, which I think are really important to be able to share and learn from. You can pose questions in the Jamboard if you wish as well. We will be referring to that space in addition to the Q&A function on Zoom. You can look at that at the bottom of your Zoom browser under Q&A. If you press that button, you can send a question to us. And that will inform some of our discussion that starts at about 1:30. So I really invite you to write questions, jot down reflections as they come up, and we will close our time together promptly at 2 o'clock. Moving into our next slide, there's some brief notes about how we're gathering together in this space today. For those who are interested in accessing them, we have enabled live transcript features on this webinar. So you can toggle down to the bottom of your screen under the three dots, the ellipses that say more, and you can press it to either show subtitles, view the full transcript of our proceedings today, or also hide the subtitles if you'd like. The session is also being recorded and it will be posted on the CERi website later on for those who can't attend live today. This is an area in which we can see the speakers, but the speakers can't see you. Audience members can't see each other, so it's a little bit different than the regular Zoom meeting. And thanks, Elizabeth, about the error on the Jamboard. Currently, too many people are viewing this file. Please try again later. I have tested and stretched the limits of Google's sharing capacities. I am so sorry about that. I think that there's 213 people in this room right now, and we've not used that feature with this many folks. So we can try to troubleshoot as we go, but it's possible that we might not be able to access that Jamboard. For those who can't see it, it provides some discussion prompts about what trauma-informed practice looks like to them in their work. It's a space for people to share like sticky notes that include resources or links or workshops that they'd like to share. You're also welcome to share this in the chat box as well, just to provide a few different ways of interacting. And I'm sorry that we've jammed Google everybody, but here we are in a technologically advanced world. Back to these guidelines, I just also wanted to note that, I so appreciate people writing to tell us about that, because of course here we're gathering in a spirit of mutual support and respect for each other. And we really acknowledge the diverse learning journeys that we're on. So we're listening really to learn rather than to react right away. And we're here just for 60 minutes. So we're accepting and we're probably expecting non-closure from many of the questions and conversations that are arising. And we really invite you to use what interactive features are available to engage with this space. Due to limited time, however, we might not be able to get to all of our questions, but certainly these will be questions that we will be keeping with us and carrying with us in our practice. And hopefully this can be the beginning of a wider discussion. So now we're really glad to start the discussion, and we can now close the slide deck. I'm really excited to introduce our panelists today. The first person who's speaking is Lyana Patrick. Lyana is an Indigenous scholar and practitioner from the Stilatin First Nation, and she's Acadian Scottish. She's worked as an education specialist for over 2 decades, developing curriculum, managing education programs, and evaluating Indigenous health and education initiatives. She's also worked as a community planner, most recently for the City of Vancouver, helping design community engagement for a municipal poverty reduction strategy. Dr. Patrick works together with communities to develop Indigenous-focused collaborative research models that can transform Indigenous experiences of health, planning, and justice. She's currently an assistant professor in the Faculty of Health Sciences at Simon Fraser University, where her work focuses on the intersection of community planning, health, and justice. Big welcome to Lyana. She is also a CERi researcher in residence. And we're curious to hear from you a reflection about what, to you, a trauma-informed approach to your work. What does it look and what does it feel? What does it look like and feel like?
Thank you so much, Jackie, for the introduction. Thank you to CERi for hosting this important conversation. Thank you to our elder, William, for the opening prayer. I very much appreciated you starting us off in a good way. And thank you, everybody, for taking an hour out of your day to come and hear our thoughts. I just wanted to quickly say that I am presenting today from the ancestral unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. And as Jackie mentioned, I am a member of the Stilatin First Nation, as well as Acadian and Scottish. So we just have a few minutes each to share our thoughts on approaching community engaged research through a trauma-informed lens. And so I just want to highlight a couple of things that have been important in my work. And I think that, terminology is always kind of changing and shifting. And the concept of a trauma-informed lens, I think, is something that really has gained a lot of momentum in the last number of years. And I think it's a really important and potentially really useful way of describing things. And I also want to trouble that concept a little bit, because to my mind, it's a bit one side of the coin, and that the other side is the resilience and the strength that has always informed Indigenous people's actions and ways of being. So to that note, the first thing I wanted to talk about was the power of language, and how the words that we use can both bring us closer to our research partners or potentially divide us, and how we need to pay really close attention to this language. So the example I often think of, and this happens a lot in health research, is the types of words that we use to describe the folks that we work with. So whether that's vulnerable populations or at-risk Indigenous youth, or there's a whole host of different terminology and language around addictions and mental health, an area of my research as well. And while these might be really important descriptors, often what happens is that they're removed from the context of what makes people vulnerable, of what puts Indigenous youth at risk. So I think a trauma-informed lens would really have us look closely at the types of words that we're using, the descriptors, and how and why we're using them. The second thing I wanted to highlight really was ceremony. And I feel like throughout all of my work, whether it's been education, curriculum, research, or evaluation, it's been really important to provide space for people to reflect, to grieve, to listen, to feel a sense of safety. And I think that really that really is part of a trauma-informed lens. And an example that came up when I was thinking about this, what I would share is Dr. Aftab Irfan's doctoral work, which I think was so important. She was in the planning program that I did, and she worked with parents, with single, primarily mothers, on a planning project in a First Nations community. And as they met, they were supposed to be meeting to inform this plan, and they ended up sharing a lot about their experiences growing up in the community, their relationships with their parents, the things that had informed how they were as parents. And in a way, what Aftab describes as a process, almost a therapeutic process of bringing people together under the auspices of planning, but providing this space to talk about these things that inform how people experience community and are. And it very much did ultimately inform their community planning process. So the importance of ceremony, and really, I think it clears the way for work to happen. Sometimes you have research questions and things that you want to get done, but there's other work that needs to get done first. And then finally, and this is going to sound familiar to people who have done any sort of cultural safety training, whether through sannyas or done workshops or any sort of educating in this way. But I feel like a trauma-informed lens really is a process of interrogating your own privilege and place, and that it's really an ongoing and iterative process. So it's about asking ourselves questions like, how do we benefit from the dispossession of other peoples, of Indigenous peoples, and how do we give over space when we need to do that? Do we need to do this work, or does someone else? Are we the ones who are best suited to do this? And myself, as an Indigenous researcher, I don't take it for granted going into an organization, an Indigenous organization or another community, that just because I am Indigenous, I'm going to have those connections and relationships automatically. I need to work on that. I need to build up that trust and that safety in that process. And it's also about asking those questions. Maybe it's a process of getting to know that it's not an appropriate research project, that something else needs to be done first or later. So I think it's really about being open to the messiness and the uncertainty that kind of accompany this kind of work. So I know that we only had a few minutes to share these things. So I just wanted to kind of plant some seeds for thinking, and I'll be happy to answer any questions later on after the other panelists have spoken. So, merci, Cho.
Thank you so much, Lyana. So many important reflections here about messiness and such deep respect for Dr. Aftab Irfan's work too. Our next speaker is Jeska Slater. Jeska Slater is a Nehu Cree woman whose mother is from Ochekwisipi Cree Nations in Treaty 5. She's been facilitating in and for Indigenous communities for 10 years. Jeska is currently the Indigenous Social Innovation Coordinator for Skookum Lab in Surrey, BC, which is one of the first Indigenous-led social innovation labs on Turtle Island. That's pretty amazing. Jeska has developed a facilitation practice based on creativity, honoring diverse Indigenous worldviews and community building to solve complex issues. She's currently pursuing an MBA in Indigenous Business Leadership at SFU's BD School of Business. Jeska is a mother to a 6-year-old boy named Johan Wesekwon. Her work aims to model accountability and transparency for the next generations. Welcome, Jeska. I'm curious about where trauma-informed approaches resonate with you, where they land for you right now.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Tanse, Wapiske, Pasquam, Mistos, Esqueo, Nasikason, Ochekwisipi Cree Nation, Treaty 5, Ochiniwa. My traditional name, my ancestral name is White Buffalo Woman, and my family's from Fisher River Cree Nation on my mom's side, and my dad's side is Scottish and English. And I'm really pleased to be invited to speak with you today. Like Jackie mentioned, I've been working on a project in Surrey for the past 3 years. And when I came into the work, we found out that Surrey has the largest Indigenous population in BC, but it had a huge lack of resources and housing and supports for the community. There was no centralized gathering space. So for me, I was really fortunate to have worked in the community already for a number of years and had some relationships built up with different organizations, with SFU, with the Surrey Urban Indigenous Leadership Committee, which houses our work. And so relationship, that really was the biggest reflection for me when I was thinking about this presentation, is that those relationships are so crucial. And there's been such a history of research in our communities, especially urban communities, kind of helicoptering in, getting what they need and going away. And so we really wanted to change that system of extraction of Indigenous lived wisdom, especially in an urban context, because of the history of displacement of these families and children. So Skookum Lab is working on Surrey now has one of the highest Indigenous child and youth poverty rates in Western Canada. And so we really took an intersectional approach to examine why that is. And what we found out was astounding, that some of these families had all been in ministry care from the great-grandmother now to the great-grandchildren. And, some of the social workers are saying, they've had this family in their client list for generations. And, there's displacement on so many levels. There's displacement from our land-based communities, but there's also displacement from our culture. And so when I approached the work, what I was really thinking about was kinship and what kinship looks like for our Indigenous communities. It's one of the biggest aspects of our sacred law where I'm from, because kinship meant the survival and the thriving of our communities. And when we would come as guests onto a territory, traditionally, we would ask permission and we would honor the nation's protocols of where we were visiting, just like we are visitors today. So we've really grounded our work in building relationships with the land-based nations, learning about their protocols. And we've been so fortunate that a number of the nations have invited us in and conducted ceremony. We did an honoring ceremony for the elders involved in our project and have really helped guide our work. So for us, even as Indigenous researchers, to be trauma-informed meant to have that deep listening and that deep, profound respect for what both the land-based nations and the urban community were sharing with us, because that really guides all of our work. And so, you know, when we started to gather these groups, these community members together, kinship became a theme. And, you know, we really looked at our work in terms of revitalizing kinship systems, but it's a new day and we're all from different nations and we're gathering on a nation's territory too. So we're calling it almost like a culturally intersectional approach. And we really aim to honor the gifts of our community, no matter what their lived experience is. And, you know, I also really like the work of SAMHSA. I refer to this quite a bit in our presentations. They're an organization in the United States that work around mental health. And they said there's four kind of main themes to implementing a trauma-informed approach. And the first one is to realize the widespread impact of trauma that understands potential paths for recovery. The second is recognizing the signs and symptoms of trauma in clients, families, staff, and others involved in the system. Responding by fully integrating knowledge about trauma into policies, procedures, and practices. And the fourth one is actively seeking to resist re-traumatization, both of person served and the staff. So I really like that because it kind of really sums up what we're dealing with when we are, you know, really reflecting on how colonization has impacted Indigenous folks. Not just in the past, but the ongoing impacts of colonization today. And, you know, just that report from Marielle Interpelle-Lafond about racism in the healthcare system in BC, we know that colonization is still alive and well. Colonial policies are still in place in Canada, and they have very real effects on our community. So when I think about what it looks and feel like, I think it's about educating ourselves about the lived realities of our community. Thanks.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Jessica. There's the last pieces that you were speaking to, particularly from that organization. We're wondering if you could name that organization again and potentially include it in the chat.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat right now.
Great. Thank you. And to those who are looking to find those principles again, a recording of this video will be out later on, and there's also a live transcript happening of this webinar. So if you press the more ellipses at the bottom of the Zoom screen, you can show subtitles and view full transcript. And from there, you can see the 4 principles for those who are asking us. I've also noticed that there are fewer people on the Google Jamboard now. So if people are interested in having a look and participating there, I've included the link in the chat again if you want to go back in and see what people are talking about. Also really inviting folks to include their reflections and their questions as they come up. We have our last speaker of this portion, William Thomas, who's joining us in just a moment, and then we're going to go to audience questions. So we really look forward to that discussion. For now, I'm so pleased to present William Thomas. William Thomas is a member of the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. The name he was given by Creator and Creator's helpers is Chief Red Bear. He has been taught for 27 years by several Cree elders in Sweat Lodge, Night Lodge, and Shaking Tent. He's been part of the Smokehouse for 19 winters. William is currently employed by Fraser Health, Aboriginal Health, as the elder for clients and their families, as well as the elder for staff and their family members. He works at the Indigenous Primary Health and Wellness Clinic in SERi, BC. Welcome, William.
Hi, thank you. You know, when I was asked to participate in this, I was actually quite confused, this, to say the least. I actually had to do a little bit of research to find out exactly what the Skookum Health and the Skookum Lab we're talking about, because I know for me, all the people I deal with are trauma. They have trauma, intergenerational trauma, and then their own traumas on top of all of that. And the only way I know how to get to people and have them open up and take, give them some sense of normalcy and control is through spirit. And I do work with the spirits of each individual that comes into this room to have some counseling done. It's the trauma that has been bestowed upon us is so intense and so heavy that I sometimes wonder myself how we were able to keep going, with everything ripped from us. I have to sit down and pray for everyone that I'm working with, and that's colleagues as well as my clients, and then pray for myself so that I'm in a place where I can do the good work that Creator wants. I know we are here because we have resilience. We're a strong, proud people, and a lot of us have forgotten that piece. And what I try and do is restore that in themselves in a way that they come to the realization themselves on how resilient and strong they are, and how spiritual they are. And people come and they say that they don't know much about their culture or spirituality, yet when we're talking, they're talking about it. They're having a sense of belonging, and then they realize after a few minutes of talking that they actually do have some understandings of their own cultures, and that's a good thing. I have the clients walking out of here feeling really proud. They leave, some of them, with good smiles on their face and feeling good about themselves again, and that's the gift. That's a gift to be able to see that. And I made a promise and a commitment to Creator and Creator's helpers to do whatever I can in order to help my people get back into or get out of that deep well that we were put in. So anything that I can do for anybody, I do what I can. So that's a lot of it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, William. This is a heavy time, and what you witness in your work is heavy stuff. And I think that there's something so much to be admired about the resilience and the brightness that you're expressing too. I would like to now invite Lyana, Jeska, William to come back into the space by turning their cameras on, and we're going to go to some audience questions. We've been receiving some really interesting questions from folks here. The first one has to deal with, and panelists, you can respond in any way you see fit. We could have just one person or a couple of people on each question. We'll try to get through it what we can. This question comes from somebody who says, I'm perplexed about how to include ceremony in the time of COVID-19, as everything I'm familiar with as a BC First Nation woman, grounded in her cultural teachings with and have witnessed all required gathering. Any ideas on how to foster relationship in such a challenging time?
I can go first. So we had to move everything online. Skookum Lab has created 11 prototypes to address poverty, and one of them is keeping our guide groups going. So the guide groups have really provided a network of support. And one of the ways that there's been a huge request for spiritual support, and we've reached out to a number of elders to just even run talking circles, sharing circles, just so people can vent and connect. And also through our Skookum Lab Ambassadors program, it's a Indigenous women's leadership group. It kind of shifted from being very theory heavy leadership learning into support, just supporting each other through this incredibly difficult time. And we've brought in external facilitators to really ground and deepen our practice of not just self-care, but community care, and acknowledging that, we do our healing in community. We don't do it in isolation, and trying to maintain those safe containers for that work to happen. Thanks.
Thank you. This next question is somewhat related there, and perhaps extends upon the last pieces that Jeska was speaking to. This is a question from somebody in Jamboard asking, how do you take care of yourself when your area of research involves topics and groups with which you have trauma? So, for example, researching violence against women as a survivor.
I can talk a bit about that. I actually think that what Jeska was just talking about in the previous question is really key and important in terms of feeling supported and of feeling safe and of feeling able to take on that kind of work, because it is really, really hard work. And especially when you have lived experience, you have family experience, you're not removed from it. It's a part of who you are. And so I think that, we're kind of called to do that work, and people who are able to do that work generally have a strong network of people in the community, within their family, and have access to those spiritual and cultural supports, where there's different ceremonial practices that will help to get rid of the feelings that can accumulate through that kind of work. So I think it's just really, really important to have that really strongly in place when you're starting out in doing that kind of work. And I'm sure Jeska and William have other things to add to that.
Hi. One of the things I like to teach people is to, especially if they smudge, and I teach people to smudge so that they have something tangible to use. Yeah. And in that, what I get them to do is when they say their prayers, to speak them out loud and ask that your ancestors come and help you, because they're all our ancestors. Doesn't matter what nation you are, they're always there waiting to be helpful. So when you're struggling, you're having a hard time doing that kind of work, you light a smudge off, pray to Creator and your ancestors to come and help you. Because in putting those words out into the universe, you're giving them permission to work with you. Creator hears the silent prayers. His helpers need the words. And in that, those words are whatever you have to say and whatever it is that you're needing. And it'll be brought to you. Or more of shown that you already have that within you to be able to walk through your fires. and not have to relive any of it. It teaches you a little bit each time you do this type of prayer. It teaches you how your spirit is doing the work for you. And that at the end of what you're doing, you'll wonder why you were having so much trouble. And that's all from asking your ancestors. And it like I said, it doesn't matter what nation you are. You could be Caucasian or East Indian or whatever. If you ask your ancestors, they will always come. They'll always answer your prayers. And they really actually answer the females' prayers quicker, because our grandmas, our taas, our pilgrims, they're the strongest. And
That's
they
really
can come and give you what you need.
This is a question that I'm gathering together from a few different questions that I think are going in a similar direction about how do we build this work, trauma-informed work, into every step of a research process and ongoing work. Someone was asking specifically about how do we support this work inside colonial institutions, while kind of being in these systems and structures that can be really difficult too.
Yeah, I was connecting kind of those thoughts to the last question as well. And I think, for me in my journey, I've had to really advocate for myself to receive trauma-informed care when I'm in an institution. And being able to have that vocabulary and really know what my needs are personally going into the work, so I can be really clear. These are my needs. These are my boundaries. And sometimes we don't understand how colonial policies or institutions impact us until we're already in. So I've been doing a lot of work, with my supports on recognizing, okay, this is a major trigger for me. I have to step back, ask for what I need, and then come back. And also just having that network of women that I reflect off of and bounce ideas off of, and has been incredibly helpful for my research, and just being able to stay strong in the work. And this year was an incredibly hard year for a lot of people. I think everyone I worked with was in crisis at one point or another. A lot of us have lost family members, and I feel incredibly lucky to have found this pocket, with SFU CERi Skookum Lab. Even though we're working in conjunction with the city and all these institutions, we've built almost this little tiny pocket of safety where we can work by our values, and we have the liberation and freedom to do that. So I really look to my mentors and my other team members on this project for really kind of setting that up for us and almost blocking, like protecting us almost. I feel like good leadership will recognize colonial impacts and almost do this like blocking to not only the people that you're working with, but also the community. And I feel like that kind of happens in a lot of steps throughout projects. Thanks.
Yeah, I actually just also want to say that I feel I'm so grateful, and it's such an honor to be working with Skookum Lab, with the SERi Urban Indigenous Leadership Committee. I just joined SFU in October 2019, and one of the things I really wanted to do as I started my work was to work in SERi, and knowing that it has the largest urban Indigenous population, and there's such a great need for this work. And so as I've gotten to know about the work of Skookum Lab and the group of folks doing that work, I think it's just incredible, innovative, and inspiring. So I think that's also what kind of keeps me going I'm pretty used to colonial institutions. I've been in academia for a very long time in a lot of different institutions. And in some ways, you just, you sort of, it's really about those partnerships, those outside partnerships, and the strength of those that keep you moving, because there's a lot of barriers to doing that work, for sure, not least of which, is, and everything everybody's been talking about is kind of connected to this, is about time. It takes time to build relationships. It takes time to have community gatherings. It takes time to, create those spaces where there's safety and there's going to be a mutual benefit, because it can't just be this extractive research, right? And so that's a big challenge, but working with community partners who are so dedicated and radical in how they're doing this work is such an inspiration. And I do feel like I have seen shifts and changes in leadership, and I think that's what kind of keeps me hanging in there is that I believe that change is going to happen, but it can't happen unless we're working like true collaboration, true partnership with each other. So just a few thoughts.
The final question is very related, I think, to these practical pieces about how this work is enacted, or where it can really live. And this is a question about what are some good approaches to inviting folks to share their stories as part of community engagement, for example, without placing the burden on them or risking experiencing re-traumatization. And so how do we do that in a way that respects emotional labor, respects trauma?
Hi, so I'm really fortunate to work with a brilliant man by the name of Sheldon Tatro, and he actually developed a engagement briefing note for anyone wanting to engage the urban Indigenous population in Surrey, and it is brilliant. And what we're saying is hire Indigenous people that are in the community to do the work, build the capacity of community leaders to be, a lot of the time when consultants come in, they're paid a really exorbitant wage. And I just think about the people that they're working with that have to deal with, all these issues around poverty. And some of these wages or honorariums you could split 5 ways, and it would be a great opportunity for communities. So that's really what we're focusing on in Skookum Lab, is building capacity in the region to be able to set up engagements in an ethical way that is trauma informed and takes into consideration the needs of the community first and foremost. And so that's been kind of our approach. And I wonder if that model could be reproduced, right? So having kind of these blockers, like I said, or community, they called us community animators at one point, like people that are connected, that have the trusting relationship. You build the relationship with them and you do it in a good way. And you're really clear about your intentions, and you're really clear about what you're going to do with the research after. So we definitely lay that all out for community when we go in. And I think, really just considering that it is hard to talk about these issues. We did one of our prototypes is on systemic racism in Surrey, and we had the community gather to talk about instances of racism. And Chief Harley Chappell, we were gathering on Semyamu's land, and he said, this land, it was a beautiful beach. They'd found the remains of 700 people there. So it was a village site, and now it's all these beautiful, big homes. So you think about that trauma for our communities. Like, that's real. Those are creation stories. They go back tens of thousands of years. So when you're approaching a community, I think building the relationships with people that have those stories and have the capacity to lead the work in a good way is one of my ways that we go about it. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for these responses, and also for all of the audience members who sent in questions. There's such thoughtful questions about this work. We're moving into our final part of this day, and I just wanted to invite the panelists to share. You can share what you'd like to share. This is kind of a guiding question, but you can also take it in a different direction. I'm really curious about, in reflection of what the audience has shared, what you've been hearing so far in this discussion, can you share a brief vision for a future of trauma-sensitive work in community-engaged research? And can you do that in 2 minutes? We'll start with William, we'll go to Jeska, and then Lyana.
Hi. I'm kind of struggling with this because I don't feel I do research. When I go to community, I always like to carry a couple of blankets. When you go, have some food. So, it's to build that relationship for people, to have to find that connection with the person who's coming in, whether it's on reserve or if it's in CERi or wherever it is. The things that we've forgotten to do as Aboriginal people is bring that gift, come with that gift, offering, asking. You're asking me for information, and you're doing it without any, you just want me to talk to you. It comes across a lot really disrespectful. But when you come with that blanket and you come with that food or whatever the offering is, a handshake, that builds that relationship fairly quickly. They know you understand. They know that part it will be taken care of. So we're simple people, but we're not simple. We're not simpletons. We're quite smart. We're intelligent. We know the things that we know. The traumas that we have, we can work through. All we need is that guidance to find the people that are there who can help us. These colonial places that we have to go to, we have to be really, really strong within our own spirituality so that we can walk into those doors, because there's so much trauma, the racism, systemic racism, flat right out racism, it's difficult to sit back and see it, feel it.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd just like to share something from Ronnie Dean Harris. He's Stalo, Statliam, and Entlakatma rapper and artist. And this came across my feed the other day from 4 years ago. And he said, it's time, as Indigenous people, it's time to gather what we know as individuals, as families, as communities, as nations, and of nations of nations. It's time to gather what we know and look at what we're dealing with. We've been running from colonization for 500 years. All of us carrying bundles of teachings, wisdom, knowledge, understanding, overstanding, realizations, calculations, and experiential data. Through the challenges of intergenerational conflict and trauma, we've clutched onto these bundles and we have ran for our lives in survival mode. I feel like to make the next steps ahead, we need to open the bundles and look what's inside, reorganize and repack so we can hit a stride to evolutionary consciousness. So my question to you is, how are you supporting communities to open and nurture their bundles? Thanks.
Beautiful. Thank you. And finally, closing from Lyana. Thank you.
Thank you both, William and Jessica, for everything you shared. I think to William's point about the research, and I think that these approaches apply, whether it's research, whether it's community work, in any context that you might be working alongside for people who have been impacted by trauma and continue to be impacted. I think that these are the principles and the values that should inform that work. And so I would like to see a future in which stigma is reduced and eliminated, and people are not re-traumatized by these processes that we're engaged in, whether it's the healthcare system or the education system. And I think that I really would like to see, I've been thinking about trauma as being a nested experience, that we have individual level trauma, as William was describing. We have trauma that we feel in our communities and at the nation level. And I think that really the antidote to this is really going to be a similarly nested thing where we have healing and address the trauma at the individual level. But that must also translate out to communities and to nations. And that's where we recognize the impact of structural and systemic violence. So we have this sort of constellation of experiences where we can actually start to address it at multiple levels. And then just to really ground it, listening, listening to the community. That needs to be, the deep listening needs to happen, and meaningful participation and involvement. So, masicho to everybody.
Lyana, Jeska, and William, thank you so much for sharing your time and your energy with us today. This has been an incredible time of reflection, and I think just such an important moment to contemplate and also put into action what you are talking about. So thank you so much from the bottom of our heart. I want to thank everybody in this room for attending today and for bringing your questions and your reflections to all of us. And for those of you who can't attend, I've just seen some messages from people who were eager to learn more. We'll be back in touch with the recording later on. In the meantime, thank you so much to everybody. I wish you gentleness on your way, and I hope that everybody has a lovely day. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.